Welcome back to Unplug It. We have a late scratching tonight. Darren Parkin, a little bit under the weather. So Philip Dalidakis has been nice to join us again at very short notice. Phil, thanks for doing so. 9-7 for the first time in about 400 weeks. We are out of fifth and into sixth, having moved down one spot with the Bombers win over the Crows. It was an interesting up and down performance against the Demons on Saturday night. So let's get into it. Phil, welcome to you. As I said, H, welcome back. What did you guys make of the Demons game?
Not much you probably can't fault. The only fault you would have to put on anything is the finishing, and that's been a problem every week. So that's sort of that's not something that's just popped up on the weekend gone. So at least we're kind of consistent there, I guess. But we always, the game plan was going to be changed just 20 seconds into the game. As soon as Max went down and frees up Stephen May down the back line, and yeah, so it was a bit of a scramble at first, and then you lose another player, and then you lose another player, and it's the whole game plan goes out the window. And but what we were working on, we seem to have stuck to, and I tell you that effort that we put in on Saturday night, if we'd done that against West Coast, we would have won by 20 goals. And that's the sort of pressure you watch and go, I mean, we don't expect to that intensity every single week, but 3/4 of that, more than half of the intensity we put in, that would win a lot of games because we were hard at it, and we were probably the best team on the night. Just 17 less rotations, I think it was. Obviously, the 3 players down a quarter and a bit. It kills you. It absolutely kills you, and that's probably one of the only reasons we lost, apart from our own finishing. And nothing else you could fault at all.
Phil, you've been pretty consistent in your want for the team to show that consistent effort. You know, you're going back to the old 110% effort, 100%, 100% effort, 100% of the time. That old chestnut. I agree with H. I think we were the better team on the night for the most part. Of a couple of big areas that cost us. 3 down pretty early. King, Ross in the first quarter, and Cordy in the second. What did you make of that effort compared to what we've seen over the last 4 to 6 weeks?
And let's now add to that Jack Billings at some point in the game was playing with a broken thumb.
Did you notice when that happened? Because I didn't see that at the time.
No.
I'm not sure anyone has kind of pinpointed when it
happened.
And
what about I was going to say, we heard about Stocker as well. Did he get injured too? There was a whisper about that.
I got a couple of messages during the game. Yeah, I got a couple of messages during the game that he had gone off, and that I think the AFL app had said that he was injured, had a check mark or something next to his name, but he came back on after that and was pretty solid again.
Yeah.
But Phil, going back to that effort, I mean, what do you take out of that performance?
So effort will get you so far, and as a supporter and obviously a paid up member, all I can ask for is that effort. Now, there are going to be days and games where they get the execution right and they get the execution wrong, and half of one, half of the other. Unfortunately, Saturday night was one of those times where we got our execution wrong a little bit, and the opposition were able to take advantage of that. I mean, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at one point in the first quarter, they'd gone into their forward line 4 times and scored 2 goals out of their 4 entries, going at 50%. And then by the end of the first quarter, I think it was still at about 35 or 40%. Whereas we kept going in and going in and going in and kept coming out and kept coming out and kept coming out. And that's in part because with Max King going down, the structure went. The bigger problem for mine was actually when Zane Cordy went down, because at that point they moved Zane into the forward line to provide that sort of competitive neutrality in terms of Stephen May and Jake Lever. And so when he went down, it presented all sorts. And at one point we saw them take Mason Wood off the wing and move him forward. And then they worked out that robbing Peter to pay Paul wasn't helping because he's so important in the link-up play. So he went back onto the wing. And you could see that they were moving chess pieces on the board, and it wasn't quite working. So one of those nights where could have, would have, should have, but didn't, and really, really excited to walk away from the game with the effort that they put in, knowing that, as H said, if they'd had the full complement, we probably would have walked away with the W.
I think it was pretty clear that what cost us in the end was a lack of class. It was, like you said, that execution, the effort, I don't think can be faulted. That was a gutsy as hell performance, given the situation, everything that happened in the first 40 minutes of
Was
the
it
game.
class or composure?
I think they go hand in hand.
Okay.
I think more composed players tend to be classy players, and vice versa. Not always, certainly, but I think they tend to go hand in hand, and I think that we probably lack a little bit of both. I want to pose to you two questions that's potentially an interesting one. A, the scenario is that we provide the same sort of performance and Max King doesn't go down, what that looks like. And B, can you put the fact that that was the best effort performance in weeks, potentially months, potentially since Max King got back, and we went back to that kind of chaos ball, dysfunctional forward line. Is there a correlation there? H, start with you.
There feels to be. It does feel to be at times. That intensity we haven't seen for ages now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's particular players that have brought that back, or a particular message, or we've decided, no, we're changing the way we're playing again. We're actually going to pressure more than what we have recently. Or one of the big inclusions I thought was Zach Jones. He was manic at the ball. It's a sort of pressure and just body on body that we haven't seen. A few, like Crouch has done it. Steele's done as best as he can, with the being a bit off his best recently, but Jones just come in and I reckon first contest that he went to, he just threw himself at it, and it's a sort of thing you go, has he come in and set the standard almost, and players going, hey, that's what we got to do. It's we haven't seen that sort of intensity for probably, I don't know, since around 6, 7, 8. We've sort of played a bit more of an off the ball, wait for it, rebound attack. But this was, no, let's get in there first and get the ball. Let's try to knock them out of the way to get that ball. And it just showed so much difference in what we've done the last few weeks. And you just go, there's probably a few games that if we played that way, we take those wins that we didn't get. And yeah, I mean, we pressure Hawthorn. We pressure, say, Brisbane possibly even. We put that body-to-body contest on them, and we possibly take those wins. But we almost feel like we sat back and just watched them.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that the Richmond game wasn't as bad, but again, I think if we play that way for the entirety of the Richmond game, then we probably win that one too. And all of a sudden, we're looking at the last month very differently. Yeah.
The Richmond game probably almost made us play that way a little bit because of the wet conditions.
Because of the conditions,
so we kind of stepped into that anyway. So it's but just that forward pressure, because we locked the ball into our forward line so many times. I mean, we won't say that we gave it straight to him first, but yeah, that's the other issue. So yeah, we just locking him in and not let him get out so easily. Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I still think troubles us the most. So if you take some time watching the game and watch the structure rather than where the football is, as the opposition defence are taking the ball out of our forward line, they seem to take it out very, very easily. But I think
Yeah.
that that's in part because of the way that we structure up. Because I watch the way that the boys move, and they move immediately to clog up the middle of the ground from 150 arc to the other to make it almost as difficult as possible for the opposition to be able to move the ball freely. And I've heard some of the commentators on the broadcast talk about how tiring it must be for St Kilda because they keep switching the ball from one wing to the other in an attempt to try and find an opening space, and they have trouble doing it. But in the end, our guys are just chasing leather to do that. But it's clearly a design, it's clearly a structure, and obviously they've made a decision that if they get the ball outside the 50 arc, but then struggle to move it beyond there, then that's probably a better position for us to be to undertake a counter-offensive move accordingly. So whilst I'm frustrated, H, like you, about how easily teams seem to take it out of our 50, there's also has to be a recognition that those same teams then often struggle to get it into their forward 50.
That's a fair point, and I think it comes down to, you look at different teams structure up differently in the way that they, I guess, defend from the front, and you look at a team like Collingwood, that their forward line and that kind of mobile forward line, whether it's Brody Mychek, Darcy Cameron, Jordan De Goey, etc., kind of defend from the goal square essentially. But then once you get past that, maybe it is a little bit easier to play that kind of long ball, 2 kicks into your forward line. Whereas we are potentially a bit further away from goal, defending at that kind of manic level, or the wall, putting the wall up, and the zone. But then once you get to that point, it's like they can waltz out of our defensive 50. But once you get to the center line, they've got nowhere to go. Absolutely nowhere to go. And structurally, that's a big change. Even though the first half of that feels very similar to what we've seen over the last few years under Rats and Richo, that was the same problem, is that teams would waltz out of defensive 50, that you'd come from a point or an intercept mark or whatever, and all of a sudden they're having a shot for goal. Now they kind of are able to bring the ball up to defensive 50, potentially up to the wing even, but once they get there, they've got nowhere to go. They've got nowhere to go. And I think the difference, one of the frustrating things for us as fans is that we continually, when we're in possession and we're moving the ball forward, and we continually pick out those defensive intercept markers, whether it's a Stephen May or a Jake Lever or Harris Andrews or James Sicily or whoever it is, we tend to always find them. Other teams, they know that we're going to have someone like a Wilkie or a Howard or a Battle there to do the same sort of thing, but they're more patient, and they don't kick it to our guys as much as we tend to kick it to their key intercept defender. And that's something that we've got to get better at moving forward. But I think that defensive structure from midfield on, center wing on, is very, very good compared to what it used to be. I think that's a really good point. And I think, when we look at kind of the improvements that we've made over the last 12 months, I think that's a really key one. It's easy to look at the win-loss record. It's easy to look at the trend in the first half of the year to the second half of the year, just like last year, and all of those comparisons that kind of flying around media outlets and fan forums and all that type of stuff. And people go, oh, we're no better off under Ross Lyon than we were under Brett Ratton. But it's a very different team. It's a very different team. The structure and the game plan is very different. And you can see it even when it's not coming off all the time. And I go back to 2007, Ross Lyon's first year, when it was a re-education of football strategy and game plan from Grant Thomas, who was more like Brett Ratton was more like Grant Thomas, and Ross Lyon is Ross Lyon. There is a change in mentality, a fundamental change in mentality and strategy that these guys have to now relearn and are learning on the job. And I can see that happening. You can see it. There are patches of almost every quarter where our structure looks impenetrable on defense, and sometimes going forward it's pretty good, and move the ball quickly and down the line we're hitting targets. And other times it falls apart when maybe they're not quite fit enough, maybe they're not healthy, maybe they've just lost structure, they've lost where they're meant to be on the ground, and matchups or whatever it is. But this is a very different team to last year.
Yeah, I feel like it could almost be the opposite of what you just said there. That sometimes it feels like we hold that structure too much, and say their forward line will change up and move around and that sort of thing, but we don't move with them. We stay as we kind of are and just let them like switch on us or whatever, and all of a sudden we're found wanting, going, oh, where's my player, or where should I be now because they're not in this position, or the zone kind of. So when it feels like when we're being beaten, it's almost like the zone goes, oh, what are we doing? So that kind of swinging from being that absolute lock on zone to keeping him out like that, all of a sudden breaks down and they get the loose forwards. They get the player runs into the 50 too easily to kick a goal and that sort of thing. So it's almost at times there's not that flexibility. So it sort of probably falls right between the two, that we lose the structure or we stick to it too much at times. So it's got to be flexible at times. That's
Maybe a part of that, Phil, is Ross potentially a little bit of reticence or reluctance to change things in terms of being reactive, because he's still learning the skill set and the playing group. I mean, we've played, I think, something like 29 players this season, which is, I think, the lowest in the league across 17 weeks. Is that, I mean, could that be an explanation for Ross being a little less reactive than he would be, I guess, if he knew the ins and outs in detail of his group?
So I think that they've clearly made decisions about players that you and I would consider on the periphery of the 23, and that's the only thing I can think of as to why we haven't tried more players. That said, I think there's a lot to be said about giving him time and space to work out what he wants to do, how he wants to do it, and what players. And I think back to another one of my football team loves, which is Tottenham Hotspur. And obviously, Big Ange is now our manager. And he did a press conference a couple of days ago, and he was asked about it. And he said, you know what? All the players have a clean slate with me, but those ones that work to the system that I want and buy into what I want and do what I ask will be the ones that will be here. And I kind of think that there's a lot of that with what Ross Lyon's doing, and it's not a surprise. Both of them coaches that have excelled in their profession. And again, we've talked about this before, but this year was always considered to be a learning year. I don't know. I mean, we're all in it to win it, right? So you cross the white line, you want to win the game. You play the competition, you want to win the Premiership Cup. And the Doggies showed in 2016 that with a bit of luck going your way, then you absolutely can walk home with the chocolates. But having said all of that, I'm not sure that there is one person that would legitimately think that at our best we can beat Brisbane or Collingwood or Melbourne or Port Adelaide or potentially even Geelong when they're playing at their best. That's not to say we can't beat them and can beat them and will beat them. It's to say if we're both playing at our optimum, at our best, with the full list available to us, we're still not quite up to that talent or that class, which is what you said earlier, Nick. And so if we then go back to first principles, Ross is learning the group still, learning what they're capable of, what their capacity is. Then again, I think that kind of puts things into perspective.
There are a couple of things I think that Ross would have learned over the last month while we haven't been playing fantastic footy. But I think particularly over the last couple of weeks, he would have seen the improvement and the pressure the class of Jack Steele coming back from injury, being under pressure, underperforming, under the pump. The improvement in Rowan Marshall, also under the pump in terms of one out ruck week after week after week after week, coming up against some pretty good ruckmen, and not just playing a role but excelling. I think he went above and beyond his role on Saturday night. He was immense and probably the best player on the field, including Stephen May for what it's worth and Christian Petrarca. Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera, again, the development and improvement in this bloke over the entire season, but really over the last kind of 4 to 6 weeks, while the team hasn't been performing up to standard, he continues to take steps forward and develop further and improve and keep working on the things that people have been critical of him over the journey. But despite the team performance and the comparison of second half of the season to the first half and all that sort of stuff, there have been things that Ross will have learnt over the last month and a half or 2 months. Rowan Marshall, Phil, how did you see his game?
Huge. I think it was the most dominant display from a St Kilda player this season. And to think that he went against two ruckmen that are widely regarded as being the peak of their craft in Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy. And he, I think, comfortably shaded both of them on the night. A huge game. And couldn't have done any more. And I've got to say, my only concern, and I know that we'll talk about the Gold Coast game coming up, but my only concern is going into this weekend's, not that they sacked Stuart Dew, but that how many players, because of the lack of rotations, walked off that ground and were completely and utterly exhausted, because that's what I saw out of Rowan Marshall, that utter exhaustion, which again, I think would have brought a smile to Ross Lyon's face, and he would have turned around and said to him after, "Okay, I've now seen what you can do. I expect that every week."
Yeah. It was an incredible performance. I mean, you kind of touched on the Max Gawn Brodie Grundy tandem, and I think we all know that as a combo, they probably haven't performed up to expectation as yet this season. But we're talking about two guys. They're both all Australian, multiple all Australians. They are, over the last decade, the two best ruckmen in the competition. They are both, at their time, have been Brownlow favourites in their own right, and both to that end at different points, but have been seen as potential best players in the competition. In the top 5, top 3, the best players in the competition. So regardless of how they've performed as a combo so far this season, I think we all expected more out of Gawn and Grundy together. But that I can't overstate how good Rowan Marshall was on Saturday night, H.
Oh, it was immense. 95% game time. That's the first thing you look at and go, Gawn played 75 and Grundy 67. So like 3/4 and 2/3 of the game time compared to his 95%. That shows you how hard he had to run for the whole night. I mean, by himself against the two of them, he had more possessions. There's more tackles than the two of them put together. He had more. There's a couple of other ones I spotted before too. That just he beat the two of them together. The only place he didn't beat him was in the hitouts, but we probably didn't expect him to. They're two ruckmen that get a lot of hitouts separately. Gawn because of his size.
They're both dominant. They're both dominant tap ruckmen. Yeah,
Gawn's a big ruckman who wins that muscle out tap, and Grundy's a running ruckman who wins the jumping tap more often than not. So he sort of had to jump between one to the other and back to the other again, and change the way he played. And he could have left the game with 20 hitouts and 10 touches and a couple of marks here and there, but he put in probably a couple of games worth of effort when you look at it He was at every contest. He was at every kick to a pack for out of their 50. He was the one who was picking them off, and you can't go past him as being best on ground, despite the fact, I mean, the coaches both gave May 5 votes each, but I mean, you would argue against that a little bit. He sat back in the back line by himself for most of the match, and you sort of think, well,
yeah,
it's not the hardest job in the world. The job
when
that
you have
if you compare
14
jobs,
intercept possessions or whatever it is,
yeah, and when basically most of them are uncontested, that was the main thing you sort of look at and go, yeah, he was just sitting there and just picking him off rather than Marshall in there doing everything. And if you weighted the job that they had on the night each, and basically weighted out to who had the harder job, Marshall was miles ahead. And it's a little annoying for that not to be recognised as much as it probably should have been. I mean, both coaches, you'd think, surely had the thought of giving him, the 5 votes each. But
if St Kilda wins, if St Kilda wins that game, then 100% he gets maximum votes there, I think. But given what happened and the situation and whatever, then I kind of understand why May gets it. And normally the person who gets the max votes is one of the winning teams players. But I had Marshall down as the best player on the ground, and I think it's pretty hard to go past. But Naz, now we've mentioned it a few times over the last couple of months, but Naz is getting better week on week. Where is this coming from, Phil?
Because the kid's bloody well gifted and got more talent in his little finger than I have sporting ability in my whole lifetime. The kid's something special. I mean, we could see that he was pretty special when we drafted him. There was a lot of excitement at the club and through the supporter base when we picked him up. And everyone regarded him, if you remember, as being the best user of the football in the draft, the best disposal, and the best foot kick. And I think what we're now seeing is that maturity, but also that level of footy smarts at the same time. He's pretty exciting, and I think that he's going to be around for a very long time. And I think he has the ability to probably rival Nicky Winmar by the end of his career in terms of impact for an Indigenous player in our football club. That's how highly I rate him.
It's a good chance. I mean, he's also the sort of player that we need to try to get to stick around as well, because teams will come hunting for him, and we know that already. And it's the sort of player you've got to keep happy and want him to want to be at the club. We don't want to just drag him down, or get him to a position where he goes, look, I'm not happy playing how I'm playing, or that we need to work with him and basically figure out his best position, his best ability that's going to serve us best while keeping him happy within the club as how he is. So it's when it comes to contract time, we sort of got to look at it and go, okay, well, what is it that you want from us and we can get from you? So there's got to be some real good talks with him, because teams will come for him as soon as there's any whiff of there being an opportunity to get him, and that's going to be a hard one to fight off for sure.
He also provides a point of difference, right? Like we spoke earlier about the class and composure, and he brings both in spades. I mean, he's someone who uses the ball so well, but he, like you said, Phil, he's so clever with it. He's intelligent with the ball. He doesn't always get it right. Sometimes he picks off a little bit more than he can chew, but I like the fact that he takes those risks. We don't have a lot of those guys. I mean, you look at Jack Sinclair is someone who's developed that over time. You look at Cal Wilkie, who's very good by foot and will take some of those options sometimes, but forward of center, Naz is that guy for us who does it time and time again. Will take risks, will run the lines, will kick long, will hit up targets, and he forces. We saw it a number of times last season. We've seen it in a different way this year because our forward line has been a bit more unpredictable and a bit more dysfunctional, I guess, in the way that it's been structured and had to be structured. But his ability to force people to go where he's going to put the ball, we don't have anyone else like him. Jack Sinclair might be it, but Naz is a point of difference for us. And you're right, H. We've got to do whatever we can, and that might come down to paying him more than his potential value might be to keep him happy. It might be, like you said, building parts of the game plan around him to keep him busy and to keep him involved and all that sort of stuff. But he's got the talent to be that guy, to be that difference maker for us. And I wish we had more of him because he's got those they're not intangibles, but they're these qualities that we don't have much of and that we sorely lack in terms of foot skill, decision making, risk taking, but smart risk taking. I know that I've got to kick at 50 and it's got to be a bullet pass. It's got to hit its target because if I don't, then it's coming back the other way. But I'm going to take that risk anyway because the value going forward, the importance of that kick is so high that I'm going to do it anyway, regardless of the fact that we're potentially not covered behind me or whatever. But he does those things, Phil.
So I think the best thing that can exhibit what you've just said is the very fact that because of how much he's improved and how he's come along in such a short time, that the hierarchy is now using Sinclair in the middle a lot more because they've got him off the half back that can do that creative play, almost that quarterback type play that Jack Sinclair's been doing for the last couple of years. And Jack Sinclair, similarly, we've needed in the middle because he provides that point of difference again for us against what some people would regard as a one-speed midfield, because when you've got Steele and Ross and Crouch there, all tremendous players, but all the same type of player, whereas Sinclair and Gresham, when they go through, provide a point of difference. And I think that it's only because of the way that Naz has come on that Jack Sinclair has been given that license to move into the middle because we've needed him there.
Yeah, good call. Now, to put a pin in the Melbourne game, we'll look at some votes. Parko, given he's not here, we'll run through them very quickly. Gave 1 to Jade Gresham, Cal Wilkie, Jack Sinclair. Gave 2 votes to Jack Steele and Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera, and 3 votes to Rowan Marshall. Phil, do you want to kick us off with your votes?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to say, and obviously he's not here to talk about them, but I'm surprised that Gresham got a vote, but I'll leave that for later. I gave 5 votes to Marshall. I thought that it was such a commanding performance by him. There are very few games that I think any of us have given 5 votes to this year, but his was a standout. I've then given 2 to Steele and 2 to Sinclair. I was really interested in the coaches' votes that I obviously rated Jack Steele's game higher than what both coaches did. I thought it was his best game for a long time, and that was pretty positive going forward. And then I gave a vote to Dougal Howard. I've got to say that we've at times not questioned his effort, but questioned obviously his decision making. I thought that was one of his best games that I've seen all year from him, and getting back to the kind of form that saw him be the defender that we came to be able to trust over the last couple of years. And I think that hopefully he's walked away from that game with a tremendous boost in his own confidence. Because we need him up and about. We need him, and you talked about Naz with that dare and trying to create and make things happen. And of course, we sometimes see Dougal do that with not so great outcomes. So you need to be able to know what you can and can't do. But, I do love the fact that Dougal does try things, because I don't think that we can ever be critical of a player that's trying to make the play, even if they execute poorly, because I'd rather that than somebody that sits back and lets the game pass them by.
H.
Um, I'll start at the top as it's pretty obvious this week. I go 4 to Marshall, basically one for each quarter. That's 4 great quarters of football. It got close to that game that we're talking about, saying that someone's going to get a lot of votes.
Yeah.
There's, if it had been a lone effort, he could have picked up 7 or 8 quite easily. But yeah, there's just a few others who probably deserved on the night as well. To Naz, as talking before, just class where we needed it. Uses the ball well, and they gave 1 each to Sinclair, Steele, Webster, and gave 1 to Zach Jones, because coming into your first game for the season, and it's straight into it. It's probably played better football than what he did when he was getting consistent games. What he provided us in the middle was fantastic. So hopefully he gives us that for the rest of the year. Because as you may recall, I basically said to him, like I said last week, who we need to lift was the 3 guys coming in, and he more than lifted from basically what we probably would have expected. So yeah, he absolutely gave us everything we needed.
I think he's playing for his career, isn't he? And
100%.
I think that probably focuses and sharpens the mind probably a little bit more. But yes, he had a great game.
Potentially, I liked what you said earlier, H, about his manic attack on the football. Like I think I'd put a line through his name a month ago and said that he wasn't coming back. The amount of setbacks, where's he going to slot into the midfield? What does he bring that we don't already have? And we know that he's quick to an extent, and we know that our midfield, like you said, Phil, isn't particularly quick. But he's not a particularly good user of the football. He makes some dumb decisions. And if you had to choose between a Zach Jones or some of the younger kids, whether it's more time into Windhager or Owens and Filippo and these guys, you probably pick the young guys. But he showed exactly what it was that we needed from him on the weekend, and it was that attack on the footy, attack on the man, pace out of clearance and stoppage, and just that urgency that I think we really needed and we had lacked for a while. And I think we got that back. And without going too deep into why or how, I mean, at face value, it does feel like someone like Zach Jones has an impact on the rest of the team in terms of bringing them along in that type of mentality. So I didn't quite have room for him for a vote, but I can understand why you've got him in there. You're both right. I gave 5 to Rowan Marshall, clear best on ground, and was that far and ahead everybody else. I think you're right, H. Had it been a one-man showing, he quite easily could have gotten 8 votes. But some other guys were still pretty good, even though Marshall was far and away the best. Gave Naz and Steele both 2 votes. I thought they were quite clearly our next best. What Naz does with the ball is incredible to watch, and Steele was his best game probably since round 1 or 2, whenever he first got injured. And I don't think we've seen that Jack Steele. I mean, 12 tackles that's a big number. And he was everywhere. He was everywhere, and he was leading from the front. He's still not back to Superman Jack Steele, but he's getting closer. He's inching closer, over the last month. And he looks more like Jack Steele as opposed to the shadow of Jack Steele that we've seen for a little while. And I gave 1 vote to Jimmy Webster, who I thought again had a very, very good game as that number 1 small defender. The week before, a couple of weeks ago, it was Charlie Cameron, it was Cosy Pickett this week, and he just blanketed them. And that shows a side to Jimmy Webster that I haven't seen. We know that he could do it at patches. He's now done it a couple of weeks in a row, but previously we've become used to kind of the front running, flying Jimmy Webster, up and down the halfback flank, kicking long, all that sort of stuff. We haven't really seen the full defensive side of Jimmy Webster to this point, and he's come on in leaps and bounds in that respect. And has been very, very good. So that probably puts a pin in that one, unless anyone's got any further thoughts on the Melbourne game.
Well, news today is that King could possibly be back a bit quicker than usual. What was the verdict was he can't injure himself any more than what he has already, and a bit of rehab, and then may come back. It's interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna
way to look at it.
I was gonna keep this to the end of the show because we had a couple of questions about it from listeners across socials. But let's dive into that now, I guess. And I'm torn, because obviously he's one of our best and most important players when he's fit and healthy and firing. I don't quite believe that it's an injury that he can't risk more if he comes back this year. I just don't. I don't believe it. And I think what we've seen out of the club in terms of whether it's their rehab strategy, whether it's personnel and staff, or whether it's just communications around injuries and recovery and rehab and stuff, I just don't trust it. And for them to say that he can rehab for 4 or 5 weeks and then come back as if nothing's wrong, I don't trust it. I don't believe it. And a shoulder that popped out as easily as it did in such an innocuous challenge as it did, I don't understand that doesn't pose a risk of happening again in a month if he comes back.
Yeah,
as much as I'd love to have him, I'd rather put him in cotton wool for an extra couple of weeks and have him fit and firing, ready to go for preseason in round 1.
Yeah, it's that's why I sort of brought it up though. The whole thing of are we going to look better without him or with him, sort of thing. It's is it something that we saw literally 4 quarters of what football without him is.
And we saw it for the
we
first
want to
9,
rush
10
him
weeks
back?
of
That's
the
the whole I think the reasoning behind not being able to injure anymore is what he's done is done, and if it pops out, basically that's all that's going to happen. He's not going to injure the actual tendons or anything any more than what he has. The question is, are they going to fully do the surgery over the off season as well? Is it something that's just going to continuously happen? There's a whole lot of questions there of how bad actually is it? Is it something that's never going to heal properly? So there's the question: do we just play him when they say he's ready? Because it's something that's just going to continuously happen, even if they do the full surgery on it.
So welcome to the newest segment on the Unplugged podcast. That is your medical questions answered by Dr. Nick. So the idea that
hello everybody, I'm Dr. Nick.
In my local GP surgery, he's got a sign up that says something like, "Don't confuse your searching on Google with my medical degree." But look, jokes aside, I think I'll back the medicos at St Kilda, because when you've got a player that you're paying $800,000 to $900,000 a year, or should be paying that kind of money, you're not going to put him on the park towards the end of the year and risk him if you think you're going to do increased danger or increased damage and increase the danger to that. My understanding is that it's very likely that probably the postseason surgery will see a pin inserted into the shoulder. But again, that's just what I'm hearing on the sidelines to give it that kind of stability that it clearly needs. But we don't know which part of the joint it came out. Was it the same area? Was it a different part? Right? And what kind of pressure and how it was done. So, again, I'll let the club determine that. I think we've had a wretched run with injuries and with luck, and the good thing though has been that, with the exception of Seb Ross on the weekend, most of them have not been soft tissue injuries since the season started. A lot of soft tissue injuries prior to the season, of course, but not many from in games during the season, as distinct from people on the track coming back from rehab where they've aggravated things.
No, that's a good point. And I think that a lot of what we've seen this year has been bad luck injuries. There have been contact injuries. There have been, in a certain situation, that doesn't happen. But these ones have happened for whatever reason. I guess, let me clarify what I said before about the risk of him getting injured again. It's not necessarily about the risk of him getting injured again. It's the lack of trust that I have in the club saying that he can't get injured again. And a comment from Boba Khan on Twitter earlier, the same medical team who admit that they rushed Tim Embry back too early, and I think we can look back on it and say Jack Steele too early, are now saying Max King can come back this year.
Well,
So
I'll take you to task on that, because my understanding with Jack Steele is it wasn't his collarbone that has been causing him so many problems since, but a knee injury that he's been struggling with. So,
is it not? But the point stands. Doesn't matter what injury it
sure.
is. The point stands. If he's not right, and if he's not well enough to play and perform, then should he be out there?
Well, I don't think that there's one player in the league, in any team, any club, any division, professional or amateur, that doesn't cross the line at this stage of the season without a niggle somewhere. But
Of course,
of
and
course,
I'm not. But there's a difference between a 80% fit Jack Steele performing at 80% Jack Steele levels and a 40% Jack Steele performing at 40% Jack Steele
you're
levels.
right, but with the one exception that a 40% Jack Steele is better than a 100%, half a dozen others that would be in the spot, right? So, but your point's well made. And the last few weeks, of course, we've seen the fact that the first half of his games have been what we would consider to be lowered colours, but the second half of those games has actually seen him turn things around. It's almost like it takes a while for his body to warm up, but once it does, he continues at pace. But yes, last week was welcome back, Jack.
It was. I think we've seen over the last couple of weeks the growth of, like I said before, getting back closer to Jack Steele. He's not yet Superman Jack Steele like we've become accustomed to over the last 3 or 4 years, but he's getting there. He's getting closer, and he's back to being a very good, very impactful player. Whereas I think what we've seen over the last 6 weeks is that while in patches you see flashes of it, but he hasn't been as impactful as consistently as he has been over the last couple of weeks. But I think that just about puts a pin in the Melbourne game. We were hoping to chat with Craig Callahan, the former Fremantle Docker, came to St Kilda for a couple of seasons, had his career ruined by knee injuries late. But we are still working on that, so we might just move straight into the Gold Coast match Saturday afternoon on the Gold Coast, Heritage Bank Stadium, 2:10 in the afternoon. Obviously, the big news this week has been the sacking of Stuart Dew. And of course, we have to say that is so St Kilda. We've seen it a number of times, whether it's been coaches sacked, whether it's been massive player milestones, whatever it's been this season, past seasons, the last decade, the last 150 years. There are certain things that do feel very very St Kilda, and it's not that this stuff doesn't happen with other clubs, but it feels like from an emotional perspective, it feels like it happens more often to us than others. The other little tidbit of that is that it's another former St Kilda player who's stepping in as the interim coach on the Gold Coast. We saw Andrew McQualter go in at Richmond early in the season, and now Stephen King obviously spent a lot more time in Geelong than he did with us, but still spent a season or two at Moorabbin, who's stepped into the spotlight on the Gold Coast. I think what we've seen over the last probably 20 years of sports on the Gold Coast is that it is a sporting wasteland. Teams go to the Gold Coast and they die, whether it's AFL, whether it's rugby league, whether it's the A-League or whatever it is. Basketball, you're right. Teams, for whatever reason, don't survive and don't perform on the Gold Coast. But I think if you look a little bit under the hood of that this season and this Gold Coast team, they're actually not that bad. There is a lot of talent on there. They've lost a couple of games they probably should have won. But you look at that list, and there's some really talented players there. There's Noah Anderson, Matt Rowell, Charlie Ballard's taken another step forward, and he'll probably take 25 intercept marks this week against us because that's what we do. Ben King, obviously, and Jared Witts. I mean, there is some serious talent on that list, and like we've been saying all year, we have to turn up. We have to turn up week after week, and we have to turn up this week if we want to win this one, H.
Yeah, I mean, their midfield, they got Took back. He's back and slotted back into the team and played pretty well. I mean, Noah Anderson, you got Rowell, who's getting back to about the point there he was before he got injured all those times, and there's a lot to cover in the middle there. It's the sort of team you look at and go, do we need to tag someone in there? Do we need to take at least one player out of the game to try and take the focus off him? If you look at what, for example, like Hawthorn did to Josh Kelly last week, the tag had almost disappeared, and then they tagged him last week, and he had no idea what was going on. All of a sudden he's going, "What's happening here? I don't know what to do," and he was absolutely swept out of the game. So it's the whole thing. Do we go to Took and just don't give him the space? Because he loves the run. He absolutely loves the run with the ball and the open spaces. If we don't give him that, then he's got to find a different way to beat us. And that's kind of a bit what we haven't done with a lot of players. We've let a number of players kind of just do what they would normally do rather than, no, we're not going to let you do that. Let's push you a different way and make you try something different. So Took's going to be one that he usually does play pretty well against us, to be honest. He's racked up some decent numbers against us in over the last couple of seasons. So if he gets loose, then yes, all of a sudden we're in a little bit of trouble there. So let's figure out what is it that this week's going to be. Is it going to be the same as last week, where first in, all in sort of thing, or is it going to be, I don't know, do we zone him again, or do we what's going to happen here? I mean, Paul Marshall, as you're saying, he's gone up against Gawn and Grundy this week, and then he's got to come up against Wits this week. It's not like he's going to get a rest after the week that he put in the game just gone. It's all over the field that they've got match winners. I mean, Ben King gets subs out last week in the first, well, not in the first quarter or anything, but without much, without putting really anything onto the board, and you just go, now he's going to come out and kick 10 against us to send a message. It's, yeah, Levi Casbolt. He's probably going to come out and kick 5 straight, whereas he usually doesn't. He usually misses everything. It's just what is going to happen this week, because we just know something is going to, but we've got to figure that out and stop it. And it's always a close game against them, it seems. Obviously, early in this year is a bit of a difference, but the games up there are always close. And yeah, it's a one. Hopefully, it's not going to be a 2 points down on the boundary, hoping for something to pull something out of nowhere again, sort of thing. Hopefully, we can go up there and show what we did on the weekend and just go on and just find a result that we've been looking for. Find a strong, convincing win. Something that actually goes, yes, okay, we're still there and amongst it. We haven't just shown up for 1 week and then gone back to what we were doing previously. Let's
Phil,
see that same effort.
Phil, I'll throw this one to you, but it feels like this is potentially our most important game of the season. We've got the Gold Coast up there. We've then got North Melbourne at home and Hawthorn away after that. All very winnable games. If we turn up guns blazing, 110% effort again, and get the 4 points this week, I feel like we go into the next fortnight after this full of beans, full of momentum to really take maximum points. And then we've got Carlton and Richmond, which are also winnable games, and we can get on a bit of a roll, but we need to win this one to kick it all off.
My expectations are a little bit different this week. I think that with a whole lot of the issues with the goings in and out of the team, with the team playing so hard last week with so few rotations. I'm just wanting them to get through unscathed, right? If they bring the same effort that they did last week, they win. Full stop. If they play at their best and Gold Coast play at their best, we win. Full stop. But as we all know, football does funny things emotionally as well. But we've got some good players coming or potentially coming back in. I haven't heard this week about how um, Battle has come with his concussion. But let's work off the basis that he's cherry ripe to come back in. Well, he obviously comes in for Cordy in defence. Hayes, I read the report earlier today from Jake Batchelor saying that he wasn't sure whether he needs another game or not, but that'll be a discussion point. But we can imagine, let's imagine that he comes in for Max King. We can also imagine that at the same time that, forgive me, in terms of our forward structure, that
Jack Higgins.
Higgins comes back in for Billings, and Hunter Clark also comes back in. So, if you've got 4 players that are pretty fresh coming back in that have that kind of quality about them, then the concern that I've got is somewhat negated. But we're going to need a second ruckman. So whether it's Hayes or whether it's Campbell, I don't think that we can let Witts go in and ruck against Marshall the whole game on his Pat Malone, given the effort last week. So there's a lot to be, I guess, our match committee to go through, and we'll know, at some point Thursday, Friday night, how the final team will be structured, and then of course who the sub is. But I'm quietly confident.
The Jack Hayes one's a really interesting one because the guy hasn't played for 18 months. Really, he's played one game of VFL in 18 months, and was good. Like, don't get me wrong, he was good, but I probably feel like he does need another game or two. Having said that, I'd love to see him back in because I think he is a difference maker. He's a very different player to both Max King, who obviously won't play, and Anthony Caminiti, who will play. He's a very different player to Zane Cordy, who won't play, but he's a very different player to everyone else that we have on our list. And he plays the game a different way. He's a different forward, but he's also a different ruck option. We know that the other guys that have pinch hit in the ruck, whether it's a Josh Battle or a Caminiti or a Mitch Owens, are not conventional ruckmen, whereas Jack Hayes is closer to that. He has spent time in the ruck, either as a one-out ruck or as that secondary ruckman that spent time running through the middle with a ruck, and rucking fairly often in the inside forward 50. So he's a completely different option to what we've seen at all this year. And Phil, a bit like you, I've been calling for a second ruckman pretty much every week this year. I kind of feel a bit different. I know that he put in this immense effort, Rowan Marshall, but I almost feel like you said at the top of the show, like Ross has now seen Marshall do this, and this is the expectation. Like, go out and do it again. And we know that Ross is a bit like that. Let's put the wood on players and challenge you to go out and perform week in, week out. And this could be the remaking of Rowan Marshall's career. Ultimately, like this could turn Rowan Marshall from a top 50 player in the competition to a top 10 player in the competition if he can do this and kind of take this role. Brad Hill is the other one that's a potential to come back in. And if you look at that way and you get Josh Battle comes in for Cordy, like you said, Higgins probably comes in for Billings, Hill comes in for Ross, then there's one more for Max King. And whether that's your Jack Hayes, like you said, or maybe there's someone else that's kind of ready to come in and play a different role. Maybe Battle plays
Or
forward.
maybe there isn't.
I don't
Maybe
know.
we go with
Maybe there isn't.
we go with another midfielder, because early on
Potentially.
in the season when things were working, we were a bit smaller in the front half and more unpredictable, which meant that they couldn't just bomb it in. And maybe that's been the secret sauce that's been missing, that because Max King's there, they just automatically think, oh, we'll kick it long and he'll grab it, which kind of was what it was like growing up watching Robert Harvey play. When Robert Harvey was in the team, you could almost sense that it's all right, Rob will get us through. Rob will do it. And then when he wasn't playing, they all had to raise 10, 15, 20% each to cover for him not being there, and they did. So, I guess we'll know.
Well, I mean, like you said, the potential to bring Hunter Clark back in as an extra midfield rotation to kind of save some of those legs from last week, or a Jack Bytel, or like you said, maybe Josh Battle plays forward, or maybe he goes back and Cooper Sharman plays forward. Like whatever it is to kind of find something a little bit different without Max King again, then I think there are some options. There are some options that we didn't have earlier in the year in terms of rotations and movements and players available. Obviously, losing those guys is unfortunate. I think Jack Billings was pretty good for what it's worth. I think I was a bit worried about what he would look like, but I thought he was pretty good, and I would have liked to see him get a sustained run for the rest of the season. I've wanted to see what Jack Billings under Ross Lyon looks like. And I thought, like I said, I thought he was pretty good, and it's a shame that he's now going to miss another couple of weeks to get that thumb or that hand right. And it's a shame because again, he provides a bit of a point of difference. But an opportunity again for Hunter Clark, or Brad Hill comes back, or Jack Bytel, or whatever it is. Maybe it's a Leo Connolly. Who knows really what they're going to do at the selection table? There's a spot there for someone to come in and play a different role or to fill a different role, and that's not a like-for-like replacement. So there's some questions there. Like we touched on, Jack Hayes got through his first game in 18 months unscathed. Really good sign. Sounds like Matt Allison and Nick Caulfield are back into full training for the first time in a while as well, which is good news. And hopefully those two guys get a good run at it in the VFL for the rest of this season and can kind of put their hands up again for some spots early next year. Again,
is Max Heath someone we might look at soon, you think, if the rucking is something that we want to look at, or is he still...
I don't think he's ready.
Yeah, is he still in a development point? Are we still trying to...
I think he is.
Yeah. Because his name's been thrown up a bit.
He's played well. He's played well for Sandy all season. But he hasn't had to be that number one ruck. He hasn't had to be a ruckman. He's played more as a forward with Tom Campbell being that number one ruck.
Which is pretty much what he would be doing anyway if he came into the senior team. So it's kind of been, I guess, prepped for that role because, as you say, he's probably not going to be the number one. But when he does come into the team, whenever this happens, he's going to cause some issue down forward line for defenders because he's huge. He is a huge guy.
He's humongous.
Yeah, he'll be able to step into the ruck against the second ruckman. And I mean, hey, we go, as we're saying, go up against Carlton with a Silvani playing a second ruck. He's going to be all over him. And that's the kind of thing we can hopefully look forward to at some point because, for all reports, he's going to be quite good. But, it's just whether it's still that development stage.
Yeah, the question, I guess, is his ability to run out games and provide the effort and the strength and power needed for a full game, whether it's in the ruck or as a forward. I mean, I think Jake Batchelor said when he's been given that forward role and you deliver it to him well, he's almost unstoppable. Like I said, I'm not sure that he's ready, but I do feel like there's something a bit special about Max Heath, and that give him another 12 months. He reminds me a lot of Max Gawn when he came in. He was this tall, skinny beanpole, had no strength, no power. And you look at him now and physically, like he's a beast. Max Heath is a bit like that. When we brought him in that mid-season draft, it was the same. It looked like a light pole. But now you look at him and you see some of the footage playing in the twos. The guy's put on a heap of size. He's obviously a lot stronger, a lot more robust physically. But whether or not he can hack it for 4 quarters straight with, against senior footballers, senior AFL footballers, I'm not quite sure
Yeah.
he can do that.
Well, you generally probably
But
don't find they're not developed till
that's
23,
right.
24 kind of thing, and got
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
size, and they know how to use it as well. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a I guess it's a good prospect, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
how soon we want to use it is the big question.
Yeah. Well, Matt, like I said, Matt Allison and Nick Caulfield back into full training. I think they said today that Dan McKenzie has gone back into a rehab recovery phase. So it was unfortunate for him that he's kind of back into the rehab group. But it is what it is. I guess we'll kind of finish off with some listener questions before we get into the weekly awards. We've already touched on, I guess, what it looks like with Max King back. With Max King out injured again, and whether we bring him back for finals if he's ready to go. A question from Josh, who's asked about Jack Bytel coming in for Seb Ross. You mentioned earlier, Phil, that it felt like there are some players that have had their papers stamped. Do you think Jack Bytel's one of those guys?
I hope not. I hope that, he's had a 1-year deal, I think, till the end of this year. And I think he's one of those guys that can't get in because of Seb and Crouch and Steele, because he plays in a similar way, but obviously not at their level. But at the same time, you can't prove yourself at that level until you get that opportunity. So I'm a big Jack Bytel fan, but, me being a fan is worth absolutely zero because I'm not on match committee. So I fear that his papers have been stamped, and I really hope that they haven't.
I guess H on the similar topic. Tim's asked around Tom Highmore and Leo Connolly.
Yeah, Highmore, I just think he's in a situation where he is just not a position for him now.
Well, has Cooper Sharman took his, like, they're playing Sharman as a defender over Tom Highmore?
Yeah, well, Sharman's there, I think, to be a bit of a that swing sort of play, because we saw him move up forward a bit after King went down originally. But yeah, Highmore himself, I think, because he got Webster in, you got a couple of other players just ahead of him still. That, I mean, yeah, it's probably a small, when you're looking at it, it's probably a smaller version of, say, Wilkie. If he had the size that Wilkie's got, you'd probably find he'd be playing. And he's got that ability to read the ball really well in the back line and pick him off, and that's what he does well. But he's maybe just a little undersized. And yeah, until we find that something opens up, like a Webster does go down or something, and there's not another like defender like that to come in, then he maybe takes that position. But he's just been kept out. Julie, a role that is just, the role is not there, it seems. So it's that whole unfortunate situation where we've probably got a pretty good player sitting there waiting for a go, but it's just not coming up. It's quite unfortunate that he can't break in. And yeah, it's if he went off elsewhere and got a game for someone else, you'd be like, well, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, probably be the fact that as soon as he did that, we probably need him. So it's just the whole thing of, there's just not that position right now for him. And unless Ross he can change how he plays or finds a different way to do something, then Ross is probably, it's not that he's card stamped. It's just can't find it in. And we saw that with Ross in like round 2008, 9, 10 with, there was a few players that were in that same sort of situation as well. The structure wasn't there for him to just slide into and play the role that they play, whether they were asked to play in the second level.
I feel like if he didn't get a game with Josh Battle going out last week, that it is going to be tough for him to get a game with Battle in. If Battle does come in, Phil, one from Shay, your Footy Bay buddy, is missing finals a fail, and what are realistic expectations for the next 5 weeks?
Shay, as always, you ask the best questions, and that's not a surprise. Literally, we sit half a dozen rows away from each other. She is a wonderful, wonderful human being. On this, though, I'm going to disagree with sort of the intent of her question. I don't think missing finals is a fail until we understand why, if we get to that point. Right. So we're well positioned now. If, for example, we got a half a dozen more injuries to critical, players, then you reflect on what you've done and where you've got with who you've got. So I think we can't make that assessment until that time comes, and I'm actually pretty buoyant, pretty confident that we will make finals. That said, in terms of should we really rush King back, well, again, I'm going to leave it to the medical department to make those determinations. Shay can have a couple of chats with Dr. Nick about that, but I'm pretty comfortable with the club making a decision. And then the last one, expectations for the next 5 weeks. Well, my expectations is that we potentially lose this week, but that we then, look forward and have pretty strong showing against the Kangas, the Hawks. Carlton's best a 50-50 game. I think Richmond are there for the taking. And I think depending upon who we've got on the field, round 23 against Geelong could be the making of this team. So I'm pretty positive. I'm glass definitely half full, not half empty, and I think there's a lot to be looking forward to.
I shared a screenshot earlier this afternoon showing that we are one of the 3 worst teams when it comes to winning the second quarter of games, but equal first at winning the most amount of third quarters in the competition this season. And a comment from John that's more of a statement than a question, who says, suggest when Ross gets them in at halftime and makes the necessary adjustments, we thrive. And he's a brilliant coach. Just want to get both of your thoughts on, I guess, that statement in a vacuum, but also, I guess, what that looks like when you compare our second quarters to third quarters. H, start with you.
It seems to be the way we almost get stuck. Like, well, one thing we look at, how many goals have we conceded in like the last minute of the first half? I reckon most weeks we almost have. But it just seems to be that, gets them back in the room going and gives that whole, what are we doing? And what do we need to do? Switches something up and we come out and then we surprise teams, it seems like at times. Like something's changed. We completely change the way the game's being played. Then like we kind of did on the weekend, but then you look and Melbourne, okay, then counteracted and we didn't sort of have the answer for that. But it seems to work most weeks. I think we've only had a few third quarters where it's like been really ordinary. But yeah, most weeks it's actually been pretty good. So there's, don't know if he's got some sort of, well, I think I heard someone say, I think it was Dermy one week saying that he'd go in there and just get him with bullshit, basically going, yeah, something along the lines of, are you guys hurt or something? Or yeah, it was just the whole switching back on or something. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to do that at the start of every quarter and actually get the kick early. But yeah, if we can find a way to do that every quarter and continue on at times as well, instead of winning the first 10 minutes and then having 2 goals kicked in red time, and it would probably maybe say we're sitting a little bit higher on the ladder than we are now. So it'd be good to see.
So Phil, we've won 4 second quarters this season, which is only more than North Melbourne and West Coast. And yet we've won 11 third quarters, which is equal with Brisbane for the most in the competition. Any thoughts?
I think it suggests that our fitness base is pretty good for the players that are out on the park. That there may be an opportunity to look at what they do before the game in terms of the warm-ups and their routines. But what'd be great to see is Ross giving them some kind of a speech which completely confounds and confuses them, where he says just before they run out to the ground for the bounce of the ball in the first quarter, "All right, boys, I'm looking forward to a great second half here. I want you to go out and attack the ball. They've had it all over us in that first half," and then see what happens. So I reckon the players would be like, "What the heck's going on here?" But that might just
The
be
old switch and bait.
that might just be the tonic. Confuse them. I'm not sure that a whole lot of the players are brain surgeons or rocket scientists. So keep it simple, stupid.
I love it. We'll finish up with our regular awards, and maybe in the face of massive backlash, on social media, some certain fans not liking the That's So St Kilda segment, and have told us that we as fans have to toughen up and not have a loser mentality, and that's what this segment represents. There is a plethora, I think is the only word for it. There is a plethora of That's So St Kilda examples to go for this week. Have you got one for us?
Oh, how long's the scroll? It's, Stewie Jew this week. Word that Clarko's back next week. The list that was brought out during the week of Buddy, Cochin, on the back of West Coast's Annihilation, getting them in Perth. Yeah,
Toby Nankervis back from his suspension when we play Richmond.
Well, I think he gets back the week before. He doesn't actually go back the week we play him. I think he plays the Bulldogs before he plays us. So that's I did look for that one and went, oh, finally one that's not. So,
you might. Be right.
It's just the way things have fallen into place this year. You just go, how? Seriously, who drove? Well, which black cat drove a car over something that? Yeah, I don't think someone drove a black cat. I think a black cat drove over something.
And under a ladder, broken mirror.
The things that have popped up this year, you just go, it's unbelievable. Some of these, but what can we do that just changes all that? There's got to be something that for us will be going, wow, we finally put something back on someone else. What could it be? Could we find Jack Hayes come back and kick 8 goals in your first game or something? It's something has got to turn at some point.
Phil?
All that plus more. I mean, it's like putting your hand in a barrel and picking out a lolly. It's so much. And people that listen to the pod know that early in the year, I think I expressed a view about moving on from that So St Kilda. Sentiments that you have just talked about from some of the listeners. But even I have to acknowledge that I think we are now completely overwhelmed by that So St Kilda examples, that it's like a tidal wave, and I'm not sure that we can avoid it. But at the same time, let's make our own luck. Let's start to have people fear coming up against us when they've got milestones or reasons to think that they've got an edge, and let's turn the tables.
Yeah, like it. I'm going to go with one that's a little bit different to the normal ones, but we've been pretty good converting in front of goal this season compared to the last few years. I think we've been improved in front of goal. And I think over the last 6 weeks, Melbourne have kicked something like 29 goals, 68 or something like that. I think I read 29-68 or 28-69, something like that. And then they come out against us and go bang, bang, bang. And almost, like you said at the top, kick goals from every forward entry. Meanwhile, we've been improved most of this season and then just shoot blanks for the first half. And at one point, I think they were 5 straight and we were
1-5, I think,
4 or something,
like
1-5.
Yeah.
And then a bit later on, we were 4-7 and they were 7-4. And I mean, it's those things that are just killer, especially when you're playing pretty good footy. And, I think we were on top for large parts of that portion of the game. And it was just a killer. And it just felt like that was so St Kilda. But the Jason Blake Award, for any new listeners who haven't quite gotten the explanation of what these awards are, the Jason Blake Award is for someone who we feel might not be receiving the credit they deserve, either this particular week or over the journey. So, what have you got for us?
I've probably got to go with Jimmy Webster. The last month he has put in has been fantastic. I mean, he keeps Cameron down to kicking a goal in the last second of the game when, he was pretty much looking after someone else and Cameron's disappeared out the back, and basically keeping Keziah Pickett to a situation where what's the name of the comedian? The old comedian writes the football articles. I'm trying to think of his name at the second.
Titus O'Reilly.
Titus O'Reilly basically said, "I'll be good to see Keziah Pickett back next week."
I did see that.
So he absolutely blanketed him. What was it 87% game time for 4 touches, and had never ever had a look at the goal. And just the work he is doing on these small forwards at the moment. I'd hate to be a small forward seeing him coming up against me next week, because he's doing a fantastic job right now, and hopefully, we'll start. He might start getting a bit of a bit more of a look in from outside, but same time, be nice for him just to keep it a little bit quiet at the same time.
Yeah, two solid weeks for Jimmy Webster. He was on my list this week as well. Because you've gone Jimmy Webster, I think I might just give a shout out to Dougal Howard, who I think has not been great this year or last year, but I think has done a lot of good things. I saw a stat earlier this week, I think from Mitch Keating at Zero Hanger, who found the stat that Dougal Howard is a top 11 defender in the league for winning one-on-one contests, who've had over, I think, 35 one-on-one contests. And I think over the last, I think he's been very good at that over the course of the season. Obviously, he's had his Space Cadet moments and his delivery is not always good and doesn't always make good decisions. But as a pure defender, he has been actually very good and probably underrated. But I think also over the last 2 weeks, we've seen an improvement in some of those other things and a decrease in the rate of those Space Cadet moments that we've potentially become accustomed to over the last couple of years. So Dougal Howard gets my Jason Blake Award this week. Phil, what have you got?
Yeah, you stole my thunder there, Mr. Splitter. But
sorry, it must be the chair, because normally Parko steals my thunder when it comes to this one. I've stolen yours this time.
I gave him a vote, and I thought that he really had turned things around, and I thought that he had a great game. And again, just to prove that we are constructive in our critiquing and praiseworthy and effusive in our praise when it's required. And I thought, as I said, if he continues to play like that for the rest of the season, that actually bodes really well for St Kilda's performance. And I might just do a shout out. You mentioned Zero Hanger, Nick. For all of those people out there listening, Zero Hanger is, of course, Australia's #1 independent AFL news source, zerohanger.com. Go to it. It's a wonderful new site. I have it on my homepage now, and you can't go wrong.
Where do I send the check? Thanks for that. Why don't you roll straight into your Shannon Knoll this week, Phil? And again, for those listeners, the Shannon Knoll Award is named after Shannon Knoll's song "Lift," and it is targeted at the player that we think needs to lift this week.
So I'm going to have it shared between two players from the game on the weekend, and they actually have very different stats to each other. The first one is to Dan Butler, who I thought was well down on his performances this year, and I think he's had a really great year. So for those of you throwing something at your radio or your phone, your podcaster, I want to be fair about that because I do think he's had a wonderful year. But I think he's sharing it with a bloke who, on face value, you'd have to question why it is that I'm giving him this award. He had 24 disposals. He had 8 score involvements, and he kicked 2 goals. And of course, I'm talking about Jade Gresham. But amongst those disposals, he had 6 clangers. So a quarter of his disposals were clangers. And of course, of those disposals, he had only 1/3 of them that were contested. And we need more. And the reason I say we need more out of Jade Gresham is because the guy is a ridiculous talent. Everyone knows it, everyone can see it, but we don't always have it as a performance. And for St Kilda to go up that next rung, he needs to step up and step up quickly. He needs a consistency of performance so that people over a period of time turn around and say, wow, Jade Gresham, he is worth every cent of $650,000 or $700,000 pay per year. He's exciting. He performs. He gets it. And I think he's at a point in his career, very different players to Petrarca and Jordan De Goey, but he's at a point of his career where he can either just be a middle of the pack player or he can turn elite. And I think he's got it within him to be elite, but I need to see that performance.
Preaching to the choir here, I think on this podcast. H, what have you got for the Shannon Knoll?
While he hasn't been terrible, again, output is what we're basically looking at here. And I mean, again, on the weekend, 8 tackles for a guy his size. You sort of go, wow, that was actually really good. But with Max King out now, Caminiti's got to kick some goals. And as soon as he was out of the game on the weekend, the job was his. Right at 20 seconds into the game, the job was his to be the goal kicker. But we just didn't see that come in front. So we need him to be our goal kicker for ever how many weeks this is going to be. I mean, as we don't know yet, it could be the rest of the season. He's got to step up in that part of the game now. He's provided up the field a bit more while Max has been there. He's provided, as I said, 8 tackles. It was the second most in the team on the weekend. His pressure was magnificent, but now he's got to be the focal point. So, yeah, let's get 2 to 3 a week from him from now in, and that's what it's going to take for us to be competitive for the rest of the year.
In a similar but opposite vein, I've gone potentially a little bit harsh here, and Mateus Filippo, who has had a good year. I think he's been solid. He's shown some incredible flashes and some moments of brilliance. And I think that he's going to be a star wherever he plays, whether it's up forward, whether it's through the middle or in the wing or whatever it is. But on the weekend, and potentially it's just results of a long season and maybe playing a bit more footy than anyone thought that he would. But he played 86% game time against Melbourne and had 0 tackles, playing as that high half forward kind of link man between midfield and attack, sometimes going deep to provide a contest and an option there, but often being kind of link man. And he had 15 touches and he had a couple of shots, he kicked 2 points. But when you're not hitting the scoreboard, you're not kicking goals as that forward midfield hybrid. You need to be putting pressure on your opposing defense, and we've spoken a number of times around the ease at which teams tend to bring the ball back out of our defense, and whatever happens later on further down the field is that's not really on Filippo, but I feel like he needs to be one of those guys to step up and make it harder for the likes of a Stephen May or a Jake Leave or a Harry Petty or Tom Sparrow or whoever it is to take those intercept marks and then waltz it out of defensive 50 or forward 50 for us and put pressure on the defenders, both without the ball and with the ball. And I'd like to see him, I guess, hit the box score with some tackles this week. It's going to be really important that our guys are putting pressure on the Suns, and that's got to be a key part, I think, in any Ross Lyon team, that your forwards are putting pressure on. It's why Rob Eddy got a number of games. It's why Andrew McQualter got a number of games. It's why a lot of these guys got games under Ross Lyon. And I think we can all see the talent and the potential with Mateus Filippo, but I'd love to see a little bit more of that defensive pressure, because even when you're not hitting the scoreboard or taking those speckies and all those flashy, incredible things that we know he can do, when those aren't coming off, or you're not having um, the moments to do that stuff, then you've got to impact in other ways. And I'd love to see him turn that around with some defensive pressure, defensive impact this week against the Suns, because that's going to be super important. Any final thoughts on those from you guys?
I thought that was a good call by you, but what's interesting is that there were 7 players that had 0 tackles. You take away the 3 obvious ones being King, Ross, and also Cordy. Add Philip, who you just announced as also having, that leaves 3 other players. You'll never believe that of that 3, 2 of them are Mitchie Owens and Liam Stocker. Because of the way they play, you would just naturally expect that they would rack up the tally. But there you go. So I think tackles is always a great barometer for how hard you work when you don't have the ball. And again, maybe that's evidence of the players just getting tired, as you said. And it's been a long season, and when you've only used, what did you say, Nick? 29 players.
Something like that.
I think,
Jones was our 30th.
30 now.
Right?
30 now.
So I think when you've got those kind of numbers, players do need to have a bit of a spell. So I think that fatigue factor is a good call by you.
On Filippo, I mean, we were talking after about round 6 that we felt like Filippo might need a spell,
break.
and I think it got to the point where we were playing. Was it Adelaide in Adelaide? So I think there was a gather round, Collingwood, Adelaide, and then 2 weeks later the Crows in Adelaide again, or something like that. And we thought they're not going to drop him. They're going to give him a rest for an Adelaide game, the hometown kid and that sort of stuff. But we thought just after that would be a potential time for a bit of a spell and give him a break and whatever. And it hasn't happened. To his credit, he's obviously won the whatever the word, the fervor of Ross Lyon, and Lyon likes him, which is great, because again, he's going to be a very, very good player. But I would like to see a little bit more of that. But like you said, it's been a long season, and youngest player in the draft. He's probably the youngest player in the competition.
Yeah, well, his birthday was only 2 days before the draft cutoff, so
That's right.
he couldn't be anyone younger than him. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there are probably some reasons there, but I would love to see him impact in that regard a little bit more. Saturday afternoon, Gold Coast, huge game. I think we've all got different expectations of this one, but I think we can all agree that we probably, if we do want to be playing finals, we probably need 4 more wins out of the next few weeks to guarantee that spot. There are some very winnable games, starting with this one, heading into North, into Hawthorn, and then it does get a little bit harder after that. So real good opportunity to put another W on the board and get the 4 points and solidify that spot in the 8, because the teams behind us are creeping up. I think we're only a game and a half ahead of Geelong now. There are a couple of teams with draws that they're kind of creeping up behind us. So we do need to keep banking those points and make sure that we stay in in sixth or fifth to be able to solidify that spot, because it is getting a bit nervy for the first time all season, and another 10 days could see us drop out of the 8 for the first time in a while. So it is important. If you're going to the game, yell, show your voice, show your colours, get around the boys. Do whatever you can to kind of share your passion and try and boost them up, because they're going to need it. We know the Suns are going to be pumped up after the week that they've had, but they are a good team. There is some talent there, so I think they're going to be okay. But it is a big game, and if we want to be playing finals, these are the games that we need to win, as we've said a lot this season. So
Go Saints.
Go Saints.